So I have to ask about President Biden. These polls come out over the weekend showing that he's losing in a theoretical matchup among registered voters in 5 out of 6 swing states, the biggest swing states. It looks like if the election were held today, if not much changes, he would lose. And immediately you have David Axelrod, Bill Kristol, pretty devoted Biden voters saying we need a new guy. What do you make of that polling? Do you think it reflects reality? And what do you think will happen to Biden?
I think the most amazing part about this, Tucker, is that if any leading American politician had even gotten near the possibility of an indictment 10 years ago, the prospect of them running for high office would be instantly over. And here you have Donald Trump, who has been indicted on felony charges in 4 different American jurisdictions, 2 state jurisdictions, 2 federal jurisdictions. And not only has it not harmed him, it actually has helped him in the polls for sure among Republican voters. His lead has expanded every time he's indicted, but also among American independents and even groups that traditionally support Democrats almost reflexively, like black voters who 22% of in this latest poll, and we've seen similar polls say they would vote for Trump over Biden, and 42% of Latinos. And what this shows is that Americans have really come to the conclusion that our leading institutions of authority are radically corrupted. Our media outlets are radically corrupted. The Department of Justice and the legal system has been aggressively politicized. And so now Donald Trump is in a position where he's facing serious felony charges. I don't think they're serious in the sense that they're real, but they're serious in the sense that if he's convicted, he'll go to jail. They're felony charges, and yet his lead is expanding over Joe Biden, in part because people, I think, see the injustice of it, but also everybody can just look at Joe Biden and see that he is not a person capable of even managing his own life, much less the country.
Yes.
And that there's no cure for that. That's not going to get better. That's only going to get worse. And what their strategy now is to basically say to Americans, and I've seen many articles about this, many things on television, the problem is that American voters are ignorant. They're ill-informed, they're low-information voters, and that's why they're deciding this way, because the Democratic Party, I think, is stuck with Joe Biden. If he's not going to go anywhere, and he's the kind of politician who has never sacrificed his own personal self-interest for any kind of greater cause, there's no reason to expect that he would do so now. They're tied at the hip to him, and they see these polls and are in extreme panic mode. I think if you have liberal friends, you should definitely check on how they're doing after that last poll, because it's not just a Biden collapse. It's in key swing states, all of which he won in 2020, where Trump now has a significant lead despite 4 indictments. So all their efforts to try and destroy Trump have failed, at least until now. And I don't think the Democratic Party is going to abandon Joe Biden. If he wants to run, he's going to be their nominee.
So there seems, and maybe we're imagining this, we pulled together a montage of media coverage of Biden recently. I want you to listen to it. It does seem a little different from what I remember last time I watched TV. Here it is.
A stunning New York Times Siena poll shows that Donald Trump leading Joe Biden in Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan.
The number of Americans who think that things are going badly in the country today has hit its high for the year. So you might expect any incumbent to be down as Biden is. But then look at these positive views of what people think will happen for them financially if Donald Trump wins. Way more voters think they'd be better off.
I guess the big news in the poll is that Biden is losing to Donald Trump because of huge losses among black voters and young voters.
The more diverse the swing state, the farther Mr. Biden was behind, and he led only in the whitest of 6.
Then let's look overseas. There's more voters, we find, who think that it's Trump that would keep the U.S. out of a war if he wins.
This is probably going to lead to a lot of Democrats increasing the chatter that Joe Biden should step aside and make room for another Democrat.
I love that white liberals are the only people who like Biden. So perfect. But the media don't appear, maybe I'm reading too much of this, they don't appear to be downplaying this, much less ignoring it. They seem to be highlighting Biden's weakness. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's just, they're so grim. They're like, you know what it reminds me of? Have you seen those montages where the media started off election night 2016 incredibly excited and happy, and as the night wore on, they get bleaker and bleaker and more depressed until it finally sinks in, and by the time they're like so destroyed and practically in tears. That's the tone. I think what they're trying to do is to put pressure on the Democrats and Biden to say, look, this is serious now. Like, it doesn't seem like you have any chance of winning, in a last-ditch hope to try and convince Biden to step aside to the Democrats to force him to. Of course, the media is, I mean, completely petrified at the idea that Trump would win, even though part of them knows it will help their careers like it did the first time around. But they really are scared of Trump. They really view Trump as this ultimate menace. And I think those horrified tones are about the fact, two things. One, there's obviously a good chance Trump will win, and they can't understand that. And I think that's the other thing is, all they've been saying for 6 years is that Trump is a white nationalist, that Trump is a racist, that Trump hates all minorities. And here you have increasing numbers of non-white voters doing the exact opposite of what you would expect them to do if they trusted or believed what those people have been saying. Namely, they're voting for Donald Trump, the racist white nationalist candidate who wants to put them all into camps. And so if you're an employee of these media outlets and you look at these polling numbers, you realize that these people have tuned you out. They don't care what you say anymore. They don't trust what you say anymore. They have completely lost any control or influence over how Americans reason, because most Americans are smart enough to have come to the conclusion that those people that you just showed in the media outlets for which they work are absolute liars, are just propagandists and people who exist to deceive. And that is the good news, that these institutions where people have lost faith in deserve to have lost their faith and trust. They deserve the contempt and hatred they provoked. And it's good that Americans are recognizing that. And it's good that those people there, even though they'll never question whether they are to blame, are also starting to see that nothing they say really matters and makes a difference any longer.
That's right. And they do exist to deceive. So nicely put. One last question I have to just ask, since this is on tape. What is your prediction for how the next year, we're exactly a year from the election, plays out? Is it Trump versus Biden November? I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, it seems to me like Republican voters have very consistently made clear that Trump is their candidate. I just wanted to add one point about this next year, which I think is so important. I know it's taboo. We're not supposed to ever say anything good about Trump. But the reality is, Tucker, and I think people are going to realize this more and more, is that Trump was the first American president in decades, yes, not to involve the United States in a new war. Whereas here you have Joe Biden, seemingly there's a new war popping up all the time. He wants to involve the United States in every one, send all their money overseas for them. And at the same time, they remember that the economy was vibrant and good before COVID hit. You can't lie to the American people about their own experiences, their lived experiences, the left likes to say. And I think as the next year approaches, people are going to start to think about and compare what their lives were like under Joe Biden, where there's wars everywhere and inflation and economic turmoil, what it was like during Donald Trump. And I think they're going to be increasingly immune to the propaganda. And to me, I don't see anything in the Republican Party, obviously that can change, that suggests that they will abandon Trump. Now, maybe the one variable is that if Trump is actually convicted rather than just indicted and charged as he is now, maybe that will change Republican voters, or maybe that will change the electorate as a whole. I don't think so, though, because I think they look at this judicial system. There's nothing that Trump did that feels like a traditional crime. It's not rape. It's not murder. It's not embezzlement. It's not bribery. There are these very kind of technocratic and obscure crimes he's accused of having committed. And I just don't think that most Americans think that the former president should be imprisoned for anything like that. So if I were a betting man, I think the odds look pretty good for Trump.